So now we come to tonight. And tonight is the last grouping in the last area of your life. The last grouping of information that you need to really live a fulfilled Jewish life. And that is intellectual, social, educational, physical, mental, personal, emotional, and finally, spiritual. Now, very, very few isms require that. Certainly atheism doesn't. But very few jobs require that. The idea of connecting with God, connecting with the spiritual, very few isms. And everyone will understand that it's a great thing to do. But the question is it obligatory? By us, it's obligatory. To infuse God into your life, into this successful life, into this productive life, into this creative life, is essential for it to remain productive and energetic and powerful. You must invite God into it. That's our contention. That's what the 48 Ways is teaching. So the question is how to become spiritual. So, I will give away all my secrets and give you a paper that will describe it for you, and we can just go and discuss it together. And this way you'll see all the information that you need to see. And you can see on the left-hand side the first, the 8 clusters, the 8 groupings. Spiritual is number 8. There are 15 ways into the spiritual. Look to the right-hand side and you'll see that these 15 ways are subdivided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories. Another 6 categories, we'll have 4 in the first, 3 and 3, and then 2 and 2. You will find that the first one is becoming a parent. And frankly, folks, that's really very spiritual. Now, having a child, bringing a child into the world, is very spiritual. It just touches the absolute untouchable, frankly. I mean, how do you touch the Spirit? How do you touch God, you know? All of a sudden we're touching Hashem, so to speak. Came right in time. Whoa, what good time that is. There you go. The next spiritual level is called teaching. And parents do teach. So it's not, for just a select few that become teachers. Everybody should be teaching someone, children, friends, neighbors, relatives, younger brothers and sisters, people whom you can make an impact upon and be able to help. The third is a great leader. The great leader is the Rosh Yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva is an educator, but he's the leader of the teachers. He's the head of the yeshiva, which all the teachers are teaching in the yeshiva, and all of a sudden he becomes the leader of them all, setting the pace for, here you go, setting the pace for what the teachers shall teach, and how to really transform lives and get a perspective of whom you're affecting and really making things happen for people in your charge. The fourth is the Rav. The Rav is the leader of the congregation. He's a community person. And he's a little bit higher than the Rosh Yeshiva because the Rosh Yeshiva is a leader of students. He's a leader of young men, or the Rebbitzin is, let's say, a teacher of young women. And these are educators who are educating larger groups. Now, it's fair to say that a teacher has more impact, has a more expansive impact than a parent. A parent can have a dozen kids, but you can have much more than that. As a teacher, you can have hundreds, maybe more. As a Rosh Yeshiva or a Rav, you impact thousands, perhaps. But the Rav is a little bit higher because the Rav deals with the community, and the community is diverse. Now, as a parent, for instance, you have a half a dozen kids, you got to know which one, this one needs that, this one needs that, and you know, each one you want to be different too. But the point is that, again, the diversity is not that much in the yeshiva. For the most part, I mean, everybody's different, of course, but for the most part, it's a homogeneous group. Everybody knows what we're here for, what we're trying to accomplish, and the Rosh Yeshiva is trying to direct you and help you and guide you towards that goal. The Rav has a far greater task, and that's why I put him a little bit higher. And the Rav has the task of the community at large, and it's almost like if you could make the difference between, let's say, a community leader and a university professor or a university president. Those that are in education, the university or the yeshiva, they are impacting a limited group, an expanded limited group, of course, but limited. The community leader, I mean, even a political leader for that matter, does have impact on far more people. And that's why it's a higher level. And finally, there is the Gadol. The Gadol has an impact on his entire generation. However, there is one other level, and that is the mysterious guest who hasn't signed in yet. So you can see that he's not described over here. And you can spend the rest of the class either paying attention to me or trying to guess who it is. Or do both. You can. You can multitask. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. But the fact of the matter is that that's tonight's lesson. Who is the mystery guest who's going to conclude it all? So let's start off by realizing this. What is the common denominator between the parent, teacher, Rosh Yeshiva, Rav, and the Gadol? Now remember the Gadol. Who's the Gadol? Let's explain. Let's give examples. Would we all agree that the Lubavitcher Rebbe in his time was the Gadol of his time? Would we all agree? I mean, a world leader. Would we all agree that Rav Moshe Feinstein was a Gadol in his time? Rav Soloveitchik was the Gadol in his time. These are not communal leaders. These are world leaders whose teachings, rulings, and guidance affects all of us, so to speak. And that's where we have this, what we call a major generational leadership, which if we ought to really be connected with our traditions and our heritage, we need to get in touch or hear what they have to say on specific matters. So, what is as I try to explain to you the growth process, that a parent is a great level, teacher's a higher level, Rosh Yeshiva is a higher level, Rav is a higher level, Gadol is the greatest level. And I'm trying to teach that that all these different levels are really accessible even to all of us. I mean, am I going to become a Gadol? No.
You already are. What are you talking about?
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Let's get into reality. Okay.
Well, you're not there?
Let's get back to reality. So, what connection do I have with the Gadol? The connection I have is to be able to understand what makes a Gadol tick, or makes a Gadol who he is, so that I can see those qualities, find the right person, and know who to connect with. Yes, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Yes, the Rav Moshe Feinstein. Yes, the Chavetz Chaim of his time. The point is that there are certain people that will walk by the Chavetz Chaim and right by him as if he's nobody. What are you, an idiot? So now, I understand that I used to do this little exercise when I used to teach on college campuses, and I'd ask a group of people, mostly not religious, the real singular difference, I said to them, between you and me, is not really a religious difference at all. It's an experiential difference. You see, I saw in my life great people. I saw a Gadol. I interacted with a Gadol. Now tell me, folks, I would say to this group of 40 people or so more, whom did you contact with? Whom did you find and learn from as a great noble spirit? A great statesman, a great man of leadership, a man of vision. Tell me who. Well, let's see now. Magic Johnson? Colonel Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, what are we talking about here? So the guy can throw a ball in a basket. Thank you very much. Well, he ought to be great. I mean, he's making $25 million a year. I mean, again, that doesn't cut it. Oh, I know. You met a great actor. Who'd you meet? Tom Hanks, Sean Penn. Who are these other great men of great stature? Okay, let's try again. I know who you met. Somebody really great. A man of great leadership. Bill Clinton. Okay. Where's greatness in the world? When you see this greatness, you really see beauty. These people are beautiful. Because you stand next to a person who has given his life for an ideal, for a cause, for a people, for his beliefs. And what you've done is you've sensed their contribution on such a powerful level that, frankly, you stand in awe of the kind of character, the kind of integrity, the kind of contribution this person has made. So I'm on a bus in Israel, and on the bus, for some reason, some young Hasidic fellow got into an argument with the bus driver. Okay, I mean, he's probably didn't. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe the bus driver was wrong. I don't know who was wrong, but he got himself into a little argument. So the bus driver got upset, this, that, and that. Maybe he didn't pay his fare, didn't pay his fare. I don't know. But the very next stop, on walked a Rosh Yeshiva from the Hebron Yeshiva that I knew well, and I saw the bus driver begin to abuse him and enrage me. How could you do this? Don't you know who you're talking to? But then I said to myself, the bus driver doesn't. He sees one Hasidic Jew after another Hasidic Jew, one with a beard, the other with a beard. He don't know the difference. I couldn't blame him. But the poor fellow, because of his ignorance, was talking to a man, abusively, of great stature. A man whom, if he walked into a room, I'd leap to my feet. A man of enormous character and genius and wisdom and brilliance. And he doesn't even know it. So our job is to get to know what it takes to become a Rav, even if I never become one. My job is to learn to know what it takes to become a Rosh Yeshiva. So when you meet one, you realize and appreciate the experience. Now, we were, last night, was it last night? Right, we were in the presence of Rosh Yeshiva, of big Gadol, of Hashem, right? I mean, because he looks the part, but it's more than that. You see and sense that you stand in the presence of greatness. A man who maintains this Panovich dynasty. I mean, this is enormous. Who could imagine what his grandfather was like? What kind of person he was to build this whole thing? I mean, what do I build in my life? A house? This guy built this enormous yeshiva of thousands of students. So you really have to get this perspective of who a person is and what it takes for us not to become one, but to connect with one. And to have that experience of being near a great Rav, a great Rosh Yeshiva, or ultimately, at one time or another, a Gadol. So let's learn how to do it. But before we do that, one last point. What is the common denominator in spirituality? This is all about spirituality, right? Between the parent, the teacher, the Rosh Yeshiva, the Rav, and the Gadol. What's the common denominator between them all that defines and expresses and reflects spirituality?
Having students.
Having students.
Purity.
Purity. Anyone else?
Recognition of God.
Recognition of God. All right. And I'll tell you one word that sums it all up. One word. Giving. Now, you can't find anyone more giving than a mama giving to that baby. You can't. That's giving. But do you understand why is that called spirituality? Because let's understand, Spirituality is the opposite of physicality. Right? Now, you want to discuss me physically? Here's my nose, here's my ears, here's my eyes, right? Discuss me about me spiritually. Where's my soul? You can't find it, neither can I. But I got it. So the question is, the difference between the two, between physical and spiritual, of course, because one's apparent, one's not, but who empowers whom? Does my body empower my soul, or does my soul empower my body? Who tells who what to do? So, the soul, does the hand tell the soul to go there, or does the soul tell the hand to go here? Who's talking to whom? The soul tells the hand to do this. Now, the soul is the empowerment of decision making. It's the empowerment of everything that we have, everything we are. Got nothing to do with physicality at all. Zip, zero. If anything that's real about physical, it's that it expresses the will of the soul. Who we really are. If that's the case, then the less you indulge in the physical, the more you allow the spiritual to operate, the more spiritual you become. So here's the way of doing it. I'm on a assembly line. It's my job, and my wife dutifully packs me a tuna sandwich every day for lunch. And one day I come to work, and 12 o'clock when the bell rings, and I sit down and eat my lunch, and my friend next to me is not eating. I said, why not? Well, he says, because today my wife wasn't feeling well, so we didn't have a chance, and I don't have a sandwich. So I say to the guy, well then, why don't you share my sandwich? In sharing my sandwich with him, he gets one half, I get the other half. What's the greater accomplishment? The fact that I gave him, the fact that he's eating the other half, or the fact that I'm eating less than the full sandwich? What's more important? That he gets an extra half, or that I have one half less? That's the question. What's more important?
That he receives.
No. Exact opposite.
Oh, that you're doing without?
That's right. That's the key. If I have an extra sandwich to give anyway, and I give it to him, big deal. Okay, yeah, you did a mitzvah. Don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful, thoughtful thing. But are you thoughtful enough to do it at your own personal expense? That's the goal. To deny physicality is to say, I will do with less so that I can give more. Now we have just a certain amount of money in my pocket, right? So I'm giving tzedakah. The goal of the tzedakah is not that somebody receives the $10. That's a wonderful thing, don't get me wrong. But the goal is that you have $10 less. And in so doing, you become spiritual. You have one half a sandwich of tuna less. That makes you spiritual. When you become on Yom Kippur a spiritual person because you do not indulge, you don't take, you give of your whole energy and your whole body and your whole soul to daven on Yom Kippur Day. Is the point that you have become a more spiritual being.
But Rabbi, there's so many other titles other than Rav and Rosh Yeshiva and Gadol that allow you to give. Friend.
Right.
But why these titles?
But because you'll see in the steps that we're going to use, which will involve friends and whatever, when you give, you assume one of these titles. Whoever the recipient is and whatever level he receives, you receive one of those titles. The question is, what title do you get? And who's the higher title in terms of who gets more, who gives more? So the bottom line is, if let's say the parent gives X, the teacher gives Y or more. And the teacher, and one of the reasons why is quantitative. I mean, a parent gives, let's say, has 5 kids, God bless them. Okay? So you give of your five as much as you can to your 5 kids. But this teacher in the classroom, he's got 25. You understand? And he's got to give a whole lot more. of himself. The Rosh Yeshiva, he's got 500. The Rav, he's got 1,000. The Gadol, he's got all of us. So as they become higher and more giving and more responsible and more expanded responsibility, they have less and less and less for, say it again, for themselves. And that's the point. And as you rise in this level, you become greater and greater and greater and more noble human being than you ever could imagine. And this works in all of life, but it's all spiritual. It's all about doing without, having the courage and the strength and the self-sacrifice for someone else. So, I don't want to hackney the point, but when you have a baby, you give of yourself. That's what you do. And that's why it's so beautiful. You understand? That's why it's so spiritual. You're giving of yourself. You didn't just press a button and the baby came. Yeah, it's discomforting and it's this and then the morning sickness and there's a kicking here and a kicking there. And I mean, I'm just guessing. I don't know much about it. You understand personally. I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could. So, but you understand, the parents have these beautiful children and they want to go out and spend some time with each other, perhaps, on a Motzei Shabbos. And no, you can't because the kids need you. And then all of a sudden, when the kids start growing and they get more independent, guess what? You had a whole slew of others that now became little again. Okay, so all the kids help you out a little bit, granted. But the point is that this continuous giving, continuous spirituality, continuous less for myself. Some people will resent it. Some people will be upset with it. Oh, this is terrible. And a lot of people say, you know, we used to joke around when we were little kids. When I grew up in the 50s, we would joke and say, how many children do you want to have when you grow up? You know, some guy would say, I want 3, I'm a guy more ambitious, 5, 6, whatever. Today, yes, a guy, how many children do you want to have when you grow up? A little kid. Children? Grow up? Are they crazy? Who's getting married? Let's do something stupid like that. Come on. I mean, I gotta have my life. I want to go to Africa, and I want to go to here, and I want to travel. I got time to get married, get settled down with somebody, and take care of that guy too. Who wants that? I want to see the world. I haven't seen Denmark yet. Whatever. The point is that you want to be able to learn how to give. That's what it's all about. Parenting is giving. Let's learn about parenting. First 4 steps. Number 1, keep far from honor. What does that mean? That means it's not about me, it's about you. So when you're disciplining your child, the last thing you want to do is make it personal and get all upset because the kid was disrespectful to you. Why? Because that he was disrespectful to you is unimportant right now. What's important is that he was disrespectful. That's the problem. Not you, him. So he was disrespectful to his father, didn't listen. His father said, do this, and he didn't do differently. So the last thing a parent can do in this world is take it personal. How dare you disobey me? What do you mean, the kid's going to disobey, that's what they do. Elamah, rather what should you do? Teach him. Don't get upset. Don't take it personal. Imagine kid's 10 years old and he's going to insult you. When was the last time you got upset with a 10-year-old that insulted you? That's idiotic. But you do? How dare you speak to me that way? That's dumb. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is teach him not to speak that way because it's not good for him or for her. That's parenting. That's caring. It's not about me. Stay away from your own honor. It's not about your ego. It's about you giving to your child. You get it? Number 2. No boasting of your learning. Don't you tell this child, now I know more than you, and I have infinitely more wisdom than you, and I'm smarter than you. Of course you are. You gotta tell him that. What you gotta do is share with him, and teach him, and give him what you have without getting involved personally, without showing him how brilliant you are or how much of a genius you are. It's not about you, it's about giving. You see? That's parenting. Number 3, not enjoying decisions. What does it mean not to enjoy a decision? Rabbis are faced with this all the time. Rabbi, what should I do? This, that. What's the question? Rabbi, what should I do? So the first thing the rabbi does, if he's an honest rabbi, is he feels sad and he cries and he says, this is heavy and I take this responsibly and I don't enjoy this one iota. I take nothing out of the fact that I've got to tell this person this is not the right thing to do, or this is what I think you should do. A rabbi's decision got to be depersonalized. Same thing with your child. When you're telling a child a decision that he can go or can't go, or they should do that or do that, whatever, you're doing so with a heavy responsibility. You don't want to make any mistakes. You want to make sure to make the right decision. The last thing you want to do is involve your ego or I want to be proud of my son, so I'm going to tell him, son, I want you to go to this best yeshiva in the world. Now, frankly, it's not good for him. I know it. He's not that kind of student. He needs a better yeshiva. He needs a more, let's say, toned down yeshiva, let's say. So the last thing, but I have to send him to the best. Why? Because otherwise, how will I look in front of people? My son's going to this low class yeshiva when he should be going to the high class. All the people will make fun of me. It's not about me. It's about what's good for my child. Don't rejoice in the decision you make for him. If you have to make the decisions, make them carefully, well thought out, without agenda, without your personal feelings. Don't get a kick out of it, being able to help your child or direct him. It's a responsibility. It's all about giving. That's parenting. 4th, share your friend's yoke. Now again, we use the word friend here because that's the Talmudic language, and frankly, all these can be to your friend too. If you're dealing with a friend or a rabbi dealing with a student or whatever, because all this, let's understand something. If the parent's the first 4 and the teacher's the next 3, does the teacher have to have the first 4 first? And if the Rosh Yeshiva is the Roman numeral 3, don't you think Rosh Yeshiva has to have master these first 2 sections first? Isn't that right? So before you can become a teacher or a Rosh Yeshiva, you got to become a parent. You got to know these first 4, then next it's got to go on. You got to master them all before you get to the top. And so that's why we say, or this paper at the bottom, but that's why you say that the idea of sharing your friend's yoke is when your child comes home and he's down in the dumps and maybe did a lot of wrong things, whatever it is, understand with compassion where he's coming from, what his burdens are, and work with him and help him. Share the yoke with him. Share the burden with him. Now these same 4 things can be done to all people you find, your brothers, your sisters, your friends, your relatives, whomever. So you become a little bit of a parent to them. We call that's my arbitrary term, parent, so to speak. Obviously, these work particularly with children, but it works with everybody in terms of being a caring, impacting, working person on a social level with others. But in so doing, you become spiritual because you are denying yourself. You're denying your ego. You're denying your self-aggrandizement, and you're denying your self-indulgence. You're denying your personal pleasures. Share your friend's yoke. Share your child's yoke. Well, I can't speak to you now, son, because I'm busy now at work, and I'll talk to you later. Kids all alone, because you felt work was more important for you, not for him. And that's the whole idea of becoming a more spiritual person. Caring for another. Giving up of yourself. Getting rid of indulgence and starting to think beyond your own tummy and beyond your own pleasures and beyond your own needs, so to speak. So we talked about it even in terms of a relationship between husband and wife, and particularly in a sexual relationship. We talked about the idea that, as Rabbi would say, sex is not for pleasure. It is for giving pleasure. And that is the greatest pleasure of all. And when you get into that giving mode, giving zone, there's something about it that's so beautiful, that's so rewarding inside your soul, that you feel beautiful. You feel great. You feel spiritual. You feel close to God. I mean, having a baby, you're created like God created the world. I feel like God. Well, guess what? Avram Avinu is sitting at his tent, and he's recovering from the circumcision. And in recovering from the circumcision, it's a particularly painful day. It's the third day, according to the teachings. And God said, I don't want to bother Avram today, because I know he loves guests. And guests are really important to him. And that's how he expresses his religious experience. And I'm going to make the sun real hot today and make sure no one's walking around, so this way he won't have to bother with the guests. But the plan backfires. Why is the plan backfire? Because Avram wants guests. He's not happy. He wants a guest. So Hashem got 2 or 3 angels. He got the 3 angels to come, right? But he got them to come in the middle of a conversation with Avram. Avram is having this conversation with God, and 3 guests appear. Now imagine, I get on my phone, and I just got this incredible phone call from Hashem. Hashem communicates Avram, give him a call. Now, I remember a time when I got this phone call from the great Rabbi Feinstein. I was sent in a question, and I talked about this, right? And he got the phone call, and in those days they used to ask you if you would accept the charges, reverse the charges. And I said, reverse it? You're asking me to? Well, of course I'm going to reverse the charges. I'll pay for it all. Give me the call. Moshe Feinstein's on the line. Now imagine if Moshe Feinstein's on the line, and all of a sudden 3 guests appear at my door. Am I going to tell Moshe to hold on the line? That's ridiculous. That's what Hashem does, and that's what Avram does to God. God says, God, one moment, I got a call waiting. I'll be right back to you, God. I'm really happy you came to visit me, but I have to take care of 3 guests. And the question is, why does he do that? What's the legitimacy of that? How do you abrogate and push aside a communication with Hashem, with the master of the universe, while just because you have these 3 persons there? And the answer is because there's something greater that Rabbi explained. Rabbi explained, explained that there's something greater than communicating with God. You know what that is? Being God. When you invite a guest into your house, you're being God. To do that with children should be fairly easy. Parents should be, and generally naturally are, forgiving. I heard you once said, I wish that spouses, husbands to wives and wives to husbands, treated each other like children. Imagine, the same thing that you look away when your child did something, you won't look away when your wife did it. And vice versa. We have to become people who are able to feel or recognize that there is a underlying situation or experience in everyone, and that everyone should therefore be judged favorably. That's, of course, if we're judging altogether. But again, you're faced with a serious situation. You can't get home with a bad report card. What are you going to do? Well, you can berate him, or you can say, how come you were so good in history and not so good in algebra? Why did I pick that example? That's what my father said to me. My father, bless him, memory, I came up with a horrible grade in algebra, a great grade in history, and he said to me, how did you manage to do that? But then he figured, well, obviously his talents don't lie in math. His talents lie in history. But that's the whole point. You understand? that is already becoming more extensive than a parent, becoming a teacher. Because what you're allowing to do is allow the child to develop his own personality, his own talents. You're recognizing him for what he's got, and you're helping him direct to that level. Judge him favorably. This is not your forte, maybe something else is. That's why you're able to be able to push a situation of helping a child get further. That's a teacher already. You're already in a new level. You're moving the child forward. Up until now, you've been just helping the child along, getting yourself out of the picture. Now you've done that. Now number 2 is you're more than a parent, you're a teacher, meaning you've got to help that child move forward. In order to do so, first thing is you got to understand and judge him favorably. Understand whom you're dealing with, whom you're working with. And the next 2, set him up. 1 to truth and 1 to peace. So let's understand the difference between truth and peace. Which is first, which is second? Truth is first, peace is second. Which one overrides which?
Peace. Truth.
Truth. How many for truth? Raise your hand. How many for peace? Okay. And the answer is the second one, peace.
But
Why?
you can't have peace without truth first.
Oh, wait a second. Okay, good point. Okay. Always like a little challenge to make things exciting. Joseph is the king of Egypt, and his brothers come down, and he reveals himself, and they all reconcile, and he tries to, and they live nicely or happily until, of course, Father Yaakov dies. Father Yaakov is dead, and the brothers are frightened of Yosef, because they say, probably he didn't take vengeance upon us for selling him into slavery in the beginning, because Father Yaakov was still alive. Now that Father Yaakov is gone, who knows what he'll do with us. Yaakov, so the brothers come and they say, Yosef, our Father Yaakov commanded us to get along after he passes, and commanded us to be good to each other after he passes. The rabbis comment and say, there's no such statement in the Torah. But the brothers come up with that. Rabbis say the brothers altered the truth for the purpose of peace. And that's acceptable. Doesn't mean an outright lie, but it means that what? That there is a certain level of, you don't always have to say the same thing. I mean, frankly, let's put it this way. Yeah, it's true that in fact Yaakov did not say that. But in fact, had he been asked, he probably would have said it. So it's not an outright lie. But it's not exactly the truth. You're allowed to do that for the purpose of peace. So if you've got an argument with someone, is it always necessary to make sure that every piece of information is divulged? Even that might offend? Even that might cause further argument? Sometimes FYIs aren't always necessary. But FYIs, everyone knows that, right? For your information. It's not always necessary to do that. It's valuable to try and see if some less is said. Not to say the whole truth, everything, or every detail. So therefore, truth is valuable, but peace is the overall. If the truth doesn't lead to peace, the truth isn't worth a whole lot, because it's got to be a thing that ultimately serves humanity. Truth can only serve humanity if it promotes a sense of sharing of that truth towards a peace which is shalom. What's shalom? Completeness. Shalem. L'hishtalem. To be complete. We're together. We're working together. So now, truth, however, is important too, because, I mean, if you're going to just give it an untruth or an out-and-out lie, so the whole thing's a joke. Then no one's going to agree on anything, because everyone's going to see a lie in it. So there has to be some foundation of truth in a person's life, in the world. But that truth's got to lead to peace, ultimately. Even if there is, to some degree, a short compromise. And so, how many times have people gone to a rabbi and asked them a question in which the rabbi is tempted to be more strict on the matter and within right to do so. But he realizes that there is room to maneuver here, and maybe this is the time to go lenient rather than strict, because given the circumstances, maybe we need to be a little more lenient to help this family along. So rabbis got to use their wisdom to be able to know what's the right decision for that family, which may be different than that family. And the idea of the teacher is that the teacher must teach the child truth and peace. But in teaching him these values, he must mamido. He must set him up. It says set one up. What do you mean set one up? It means he's got to stand him up. Stand him up means the child's sitting in front of you and he's teaching. And he's learning. And you're teaching him. Very nice. And as you teach, and as the child is learning, do you see this child internalizing this information to the point where he will be able to stand up on his own 2 feet and learn that same truth and pursue that same peace? You've got to teach him to be independent. It says here, set one on. That's a lousy translation. It's my translation, I can criticize it. It's no good. The better translation would be from the Hebrew ma'amido. Stand him up. Teach him to stand up on his own. Teach him how to make his own decisions. Teach him how to pursue truth. Teach him to discern truth from falsehood on his own. That's the whole idea. Because one day you won't be there. And the child's going to have to know how to do it on his own, you see? And the same thing with peace. Teaching the value of peace and teaching the value of what the ultimate goal is for mankind has to be something that you implant within your children to the extent that they will become the new generation that will pursue the same thing. The values you're teaching. But it's got to be, the Hebrew word is ma'amido, stand him up. Give him independence with the values of life. What are the values of life? Truth and peace. So, in this matter, we're saying that this is a higher level than parenting. This is where you're directing the child. Parents may teach their children at home till they're about 5 or 6, and maybe a little bit each night they come home from school. But who's really shaping the child now? Who's really teaching him how to move around independently, how to achieve the right decisions, move forward, become a bigger, greater person? Who's teaching him the values that he needs to do to be able to make decisions on his own? That's the teacher. That's the Rebbe. That's a higher level. Parents can do this too. But ultimately, then you get into the position where you're a Rebbe as well as a parent. And that's fine. But the point is the Rebbe is a higher level of giving. Because in this level of giving, you see, I don't want to learn or teach to make decisions for you. I made my own decisions. I want you to make yours. I'm totally not brainwashing you. I want to remove myself from your life to the extent where you can be independent. Yes, I want to be with you and I love you and there's always a relationship. You can always call me and ask questions or whatever. But I'm trying to teach you how to separate from me. Should parents do that too? To some degree. To some degree. How many parents are reluctant to send a child away from home to a dormitory situation out of town where the child will grow and needs to grow, but in fact, we don't want to let him go because we're so close. And because we don't go to Disneyland every Sunday. No. The child needs to be in school on Sunday, not at Disneyland. He needs to be in yeshiva. He needs to be learning. And you got to be reluctant with that. You're not reluctant, you got to be relinquishing with that. You got to relinquish. The child's not yours. It's not your toy. He is something that Hashem entrusted to you to help, to guide, to stand up on his own 2 feet. Imagine the joy of a parent. Little baby, and he's crawling all over the place, and one day, the baby stands. One day the baby started to walk. What a sweetie, what a beautiful moment. That's what you want from your children as they move forward in life. Do parents need to relinquish? Absolutely. Stand them up. Relinquish. That's the goal of a higher level of parenting. That's teaching. Can parents become teachers? Sure. You call your father Avi Mori, my father, my teacher. Mother, Imi Morossi, my mother, my teacher. That's the whole idea. So now we're in a level where we're really, really learning how to give of ourselves. It's not about me. It's about giving. And the key to giving is not so much what I've given, as much as what I've relinquished, what I've given up. Give it up. I mean, you go through so much to raise a child, to bring a child into the world, to go out and work like a dog day and night to bring home money so that the children can have food on the table, this, that, and that. You say you sacrifice your whole life for your kids. What do I get back for it? Nothing. What do I get back for it? Kid runs away, goes to some other far away, moves to New York, and he calls me up before Shabbos to wish me good Shabbos. Thanks a lot. That's what I get. I mean, so what did you have your kid for? I know why. You had a daughter, so she could help with the dishes. You had a son, so you could take out the garbage. No, you can hire servants for that. What do you have a child for? To be able to see his achievements. And to see him stand there on his own 2 feet and build a family of his own. And you got grandchildren. Wow. That's joy, that's nachas, that's spiritual nachas. You can't place a monetary value on that or a money sign on it. It's the soul. It's spiritual. It's nothing to do with physical at all. There's nothing physical about it. But it's the most pleasurable thing you could imagine. And so, as we move forward in our spiritual journey to become more close to God, more giving up, and more pleasure, we come on to number 3, the Rosh Yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva is heading the academy of 500 students. He's responsible for their growth on a personal level, not just on a communal or general level. He's got big responsibilities, big shoulders. He's got to make major decisions. He's got to get out there and fundraise to make the yeshiva viable, pay his bills. He's got to pay his rabbis, pay the teachers. And he's responsible to set the guide for curriculum. This is what they need to learn. He's got to make that decision. And that's going to affect those kids. But the decision he makes, this is big impact. So, this big impact is where you begin focused in learning. What does focused in learning mean? That you're so focused in what learning is and what kind of learning is necessary that in fact you are able to chart the proper curriculum of learning for 500 students, 500 children. You can chart that because you have that sense of leadership, expanded responsibility, that you are doing this all to make sure the kids get the very best that they need in education, in growth, in direction. And so therefore, this is a higher level of giving. Questioning and answering. What's questioning and answering mean? It means not just question, but it means answer. It means not just answer with questions. Provoke questions. Get kids to feed back. Give them questions that will tantalize them, that won't let them sleep at night, that will move them and inspire them to greater heights, greater understanding, greater levels of appreciation of what knowledge is all about. Questions and answers. Get into a dialogue with kids. Can parents do that? Sure they can. Then they become like a Rosh Yeshiva. That's okay. But the Rosh Yeshiva has this greater level of experience. Now some parents can't. Okay, so I send the child away to some yeshiva somewhere where the Rosh Yeshiva will get him cooking. Now, that won't be always so easy. And the child will have to go through moments of despair and difficulty. But the Rosh Yeshiva will be there for him to help him and cradle him before the fall so that he can stand up again and try again. This way he becomes the best he can be in learning. His sense of awareness, his sense of knowledge becomes expanded because the teachers have engaged him. He hasn't just sat there. It's been a full interchange, dialogue between parent and between child and Rebbe. And this is the Rosh Yeshiva. And finally, the Rosh Yeshiva does what we call hearing and contribution. He makes more learning happen, increased learning happen, deeper profundity, deeper perceptions by virtue of the fact that there's this constant dialogue that's going on, and he's adding to it. He's demanding the child, the student adds to it, and he's adding and learning and learning. We have a very interesting statement in the Talmud. Talmud says, when the child's 5 or 6 or 7, treat him softly and kindly and help him to learn the best he can. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, blah, blah, blah. Now he's about 8 years old, 10 years old. Asaf lo keturah, open his mouth and shove the Torah down his throat. What does it mean? It means give him everything he can handle. Give him it all. Don't hold back. Give him as far advanced as he can go. And you got to be perceptive enough to how far he can go. You see? And then what you're really teaching here is, as the Rosh Yeshiva, you're bringing the best out of this kid. You have given him more talents than he ever imagined he had, because you have stimulated him for further learning, deeper insights, and that's not enough. Give me more. Student is growing. Now comes the Rav. So the Rav is now learning to teach and learning to do. The learning to teach and learning to do, as the Rav does, is basically the idea that you have to send your students or your people or your community out not only to teach, but also to do. In other words, I'm a Rav of a community of 1,000 members of the shul. What I'm going to do with my community, with my leadership, is I want to get these people out there to appreciate the sense of Jewish life to the extent where they're sharing it with others. Go out and teach it now. Go out and take this information and get it out there to disseminate it to the crowds. That's what Rabbi Block did. My Rebbe Rabbi Block was a Rosh Yeshiva in the sense that he said to his students, okay, now you've learned, what are you doing with it? Move out. Get going. Share it. Give it. Well, I'm not made to be a teacher. I'm going to a different profession. Doesn't mean you have to stop teaching. Every time you meet someone who knows a little bit less than you, give them something. I challenge you, says the Rav, to take your growth, your learning, your ability as a student, and share it with others. Rabbi Block will claim that's the highest level of scholarship, teaching. And every one of us can be a teacher one way or another. I was sitting on a plane, and behind me was a religious woman, and she came up to me. I was sitting in the aisle seat all the time because I have to go to the bathroom often, so it's unpleasant not to sit in the aisle. I was sitting in the aisle seat. They should give it to me. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, and this religious woman is sitting behind me, and she said to me, would you mind changing seats with me, because I'd rather not sit next to a man. And I said, I'd be glad to, except I can't give up my aisle seat, because I really need the aisle. And so, okay, so she reluctantly sat down next to the man. Midway in the trip, maybe 3 hours onto the flight, I turn around, and she's engaged in conversation with this guy. Whoa! Now she's a married woman, she's wearing a hair cover. What's she doing? She sees this guy's Jewish. She sees this guy knows very little. She also sees that he's fascinated with her religiosity. So she begins to share with him. She begins to teach him. And he's talking freely now about his bar mitzvah and his education. He really wanted to learn more. And she gives him advice, where to go to school, where to go to learn, this, that, and that. She probably told him to call me up, whatever it is. Call Rabbi Block, don't forget him. You got it, all right? Whatever it is, you understand? Anybody should be teaching everybody. But I don't know that much. I'm not smart enough in Judaism. But you're smart enough than the next guy. He knows less than you. Help him out. Share with him. That's the idea of really impacting, real leadership. You know what real leadership is? I'm spiritual, I'm giving to you. I'm teaching you spirituality. Give to them. That's real spirituality. That's how you really become spiritual. And our spiritual leader walks in. And so that's what the Rav is supposed to do. The Rav who in this lesson here has a higher level than the Rosh Yeshiva, is the Rav that is doing what? He is teaching and giving of himself to the extent where he wants his recipients to do the same as he's doing. I'm giving to you. I'm giving of my life to you. I'm self-sacrificing. I'm not in this for myself. I'm not making a big salary, this, that, and that. Okay, what does that mean? That means that I am the kind of person that's a role model. What do I mean a role model? I'm a role model of spirituality. Why? Because spirituality means no taking, just giving. That's what it means, right? We said spirituality is when the physical is just not there. Giving of myself, my time, my energy, my tuna sandwich, my Stuckamon, whatever it is. The key is not the recipient. What's the key? The guy who gives. He becomes enriched. Says the Torah, Yichuli Truma. You want to give a gift to the Beis Hamikdash, to the Mishkan? Take it. I mean, take it. Give it. It's the word. No. You know why? Because when you give, then you really take. When you give pleasure, it's the greatest pleasure. Don't look for pleasure. Look to give pleasure, Rebbe said. Correct? So, therefore, what we're trying to say here is that if you're really impacting and giving, and you're really setting people in motion, and giving them a great education, and a great parenting, and a great leadership, as a Rav, you should be asking of your followers to take your role model and do the same. Give to others. I'm giving to you. You hear the time I give to you, the teaching I'm giving to you. And by the way, Rebbe also said a great lesson, and I said it at the banquet the other night. There is no greater gift you can give any human being than giving him a gift of teaching him about religion, about spirituality, about God. You can't do anything better to another person than introducing him to God. You can't. You can give him money. You can give him caring. You can give him emotional support. You can give him love. You can give him lots of stuff. You can't give him any gift better than the gift of, here's Hashem. The gift of, would you like to know more about God? The gift of, what is our Judaism all about? You can't give a gift better than that. And that's the idea of giving, because that's the idea of spirituality. But I'm too busy, I ain't got time. Or, as the lady might say on the airplane, well, I really would like to do it, but I don't want to speak to a man. With all due respect, Mrs. whomever, Rebbetzin whomever, you're doing the wrong thing. Because she engaged this guy. And she's obviously a very religious woman. She engaged the guy. And got the guy to open up and share a little bit about his Jewish background, this, that, and that. Now, I'm in a big hurry, you understand? And I got to make this meeting and this, that, and that. And guess what? Someone stops me in the middle of nowhere. And of course, I couldn't possibly know that he's Jewish because he doesn't look Jewish. I mean, I know what a Jew looks like anyway. I mean, a Jew looks like this. No, what a yam going to be. I don't know what a Jew looks like. Other than that, right? All right. And so the guy stops me and says, "Shalom." I say, "Shalom," and he engages me in a question off the top of his head. I mean, in the middle of, I'd like this. I gotta go. I got an appointment. Put all this on the paper here. You Rabbi Block didn't have a chance to look at it. But you have to guess. Who is the mystery guest? Who is the one person that's greater than them all? Who is the one person that's greater than them all? Greater than the teacher, greater than the Rebbe, greater than the Rosh Yeshiva, greater than the Rav, greater than the Gadol, greater than the Lubavitcher Rebbe, greater than everybody. Who's the greatest man of all? Who gives everything of himself to the Jewish people? He's not a man. Thank you. But no thank you. Who is the one who is going to give? Who is who's the mystery guest?
Mashiach.
Would you please show up, please, sir? You come in, please. Who's the mystery guest?
Mashiach.
Oh, someone got it. Whoa, Jess got it.
Yes.
The Mashiach. The Mashiach is sent by Hashem to do nothing more in his life than redeem his people. He's not here to drink soda. He's not here to eat ice cream. He's not here to watch a television show. He's not any of that. He's nothing but purely for his people. David HaMelech is purely for his people. Do you understand? That's the ultimate spirituality. And how do I know that? Because if you look at number 6, which of course is blank as you can see, and I asked someone to fill it in, and just got to fill it in. It says over number 6, repeating in the name of the one who said it. And the Mishnah says, anyone who says over a piece of Torah or piece of learning from someone who said it and uses his name, he will bring redemption to the world. How do you bring Mashiach? How do you be Mashiach? To be able to give credit to others. Nothing for me. Everything I have is all that I was taught. By my Rebbe, by my teachers, by my parents, by my Rebbe, by